Evening, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to open this regular council meeting of Wednesday, September 14th by standing and saying the Pledge of Allegiance. And if I could, right after the Pledge of Allegiance, let's just take a moment of silence for the 21st anniversary of September 11th, and just remember all those who died, all those who were injured, and all those who still carry their wounds to this day. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Yes. Council President Michael Platt.
Present.
Councilperson Joseph Day.
Present.
Councilperson Valerie Berry. Present. Councilperson Russell Smith.
Present.
Councilperson Suzanne Sauer.
Present.
Also present are Mayor Michael Carranza, Treasurer Janet Carlin, City Administrator William Barthel, Chief of Police Richard McCabe, City Solicitor Daniel Losco, and Building Official Jeffrey Bergson,
Thank you.
and also City Planner Christopher Rogers.
Thank you. Minutes of August 9th, 2020 regular meetings. You have a motion to have approved.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Minutes are approved. Staff report to approve, report for the treasurer.
This unaudited report, the treasurer's report, is that as of August 31st, 2022. The unrestricted funds, $7,567,976.29. Total restricted funds, $4,385,164.17. Total cash in the accounts, $11,953,140.46.
Any questions for the treasurer? Motion to approve the treasurer's report. Second. All in favor? Board committees. Thank you, ma'am. Council communication, Mr. Day, anything? Councilperson Leary.
No report.
Councilperson Saunders.
I just wanted everybody to know that Rite Aid has the new COVID vaccine. If you're interested, I was able to go online and get an appointment within an hour of when I was sitting there looking at it. It may have gotten filled up a little more now as people realize it's available. I think Walgreens is working on getting them too. So if you're interested, check it out on their website.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Smith.
Just one thing, it's an old thing. In the spring of 2021, council approved a resolution regarding state historical marker to tell the story of some slaves that were brought to Newcastle. They were part of a shipment of slaves by the Dutch, and they got caught up in the capture of New York by the English, and then the capture of New Amstel by the English. And the resolution approved of having such a marker to tell that story. And the Ann Yarborough is the one who suggested this marker, and she worked with the state and with me to an extent developing the text for the marker, and that was one thing we had to get done. And then we needed a location approved by the trustees for it to go on their land, and they approved a location in the Bull Hill Park along the gravel road connecting Chestnut and Strand. And so they've approved that. So we have gone through all the steps. And now all we have to do is say, okay, to the state. And they're the ones who usually place the marker. And Mr. Platt and Mr. Toner will go with me out to the site to make sure that we have an agreed upon place for this marker.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Mr. Berthel, can I have reports from the administrator and staff?
Sure, Mr. Platt, I have a number of items here for council. First of all, a bid update on our floating pier. We should be ready, and I've been, keeping council informed of this. I indicated that, I think last month that, or the month prior to that, we ran into some engineering concerns. I think those have been ironed out, and so we should be ready to go to bid for that at the end of September or early October. The next item I have is the fishing pier, which has been slated for south of Dobbinsville. I did receive some information concerning that, an update on that. Again, I think if you all recall, I indicated that that pier was set to be, or was on the schedule once the project in Wilmington, 7th Street ramp project was completed. Well, I've been told it's underway, that project in Wilmington, and they're starting to gear up to do the Dobbinsville project. They have an engineering firm lined up to do the design and engineering, and the city should be receiving a MOU from them in the not too distant future. I did ask about construction, when construction would start and when when they'd be ready for completion, and was told that it's probably going to be a year from now before construction begins based on permitting and approvals that they have to obtain from various entities, which we're all aware that we had to do when we did our pier, and that the construction should be completed in the summer of 2024. So at least we have something more definitive now, and as soon as I get the MOU from those folks, Mr. Lasko and I will look through it and obviously keep council apprised of our recommendations on what they propose to us. And then the next to the last thing I have is the Goodwill boat ramp update. As you all are aware, the city is the recipient of those funds from the state. There was a pre-bid meeting last Wednesday with Century Engineering, the firm doing the engineering for Goodwill. It was attended by myself, Timmy Moore, and Chief Majewski, and there were 6 potential bidders there. The bids for that project are due back on the 23rd, and we're hoping that that project will be completed prior to March. So a lot of things happening in the water. The last thing I have is just to let council and everyone know that the Rivertown Ride is scheduled for Saturday, October 1st. We're anticipating over 300 registrants, and there will be a band here from 1 to 4. And as we've said in the past, we think this is a really good biking event. We get participants from Connecticut to Virginia, and we think that it's a way for us to showcase the biking paths that we have, and the fact that we do welcome people in town with their bikes.
Well, it's just a matter of somebody registering and taking the ride. There's no competition.
Not official, no, it's really a personal competition. So if you ride for 10 miles, you would get a medal. If you ride more than that, you would get a medal for that. If you want to just ride one leg of it into Delaware City and back, or if you go into Delaware City and stop from there, I don't believe there's a medal for that. So no, there's no competition like from the early days when we had the time trials. That's not what that is.
Any questions for the city administrator?
I do want to mention one other thing, if you don't mind. I couldn't make last month's meeting, unfortunately, and of course I did read the minutes, and it seems to me you do better without me here. You did a pretty good job at the last council meeting, so I just wanted to
I'm
mention
going to
that.
plead the fifth on that. Now, or else we're always pretty sure our input, that's for sure. The other reports.
That's all I have, Mr. Platt. Chief?
Mr. President, Council. The we have no questions about the monthly report, I can move into a couple of incidents that need to be reported. First, with this report, we've updated our website again, and these are now going to be on here for people to view. So pretty much how you get them is what it's going to look like on the website. And then we'll have our annual report next to it as well. So far this month, we've, and into this, the last couple of weeks, we most recently are investigating a carjacking that occurred at the BJ's. 86-year-old woman was robbed at gunpoint. Her car was stolen. We recovered the vehicle, the weapon, and we're actively investigating this. But if you follow us on Facebook, please share it. There's a pretty good picture of the suspect there, and we're looking for anybody that can help us locate that suspect. Earlier in the month, we investigated the disorderly premise at the Penn Valley area. This was a premise that was the source of many calls for service, drug calls, weapons calls, disorderly calls. We investigated it. We were serving the disorderly premise and serving a search warrant at the same time, but made 2 arrests, recovered some drugs and some weapons. And I'm pretty sure we're going to be able to shut that house down. I don't think we're going to have any more issues from there. We investigated a reckless endangering and vehicular assault in a commercial property in the area of West 7th Street. Suspect was taken into custody and charged with reckless assault second. Was involved in some form of a verbal altercation, and during the process struck 2 people with his vehicle. Our officers were able to get enough information to locate the suspect and make the arrest. Most recently, we're investigating an indecent exposure on the Markel Trail. The victim notified us that the suspect, this was early Sunday morning, the victim was by herself and noticed that the suspect was kind of watching her, and then at the appropriate time to him felt past her and exposed himself. We're researching that, but it leads us to say that when we're in these areas, we want to be extra careful. Not that it's illegal to not have your phone, and I said that to the victim, but have your phone. And that's a call to 911, by the way. And the other issue that came out of that was getting a police response. The 322-9800 number that's our main number. That's an administrative number that's going to get staff officers, the secretary, detective if you need it. But it's not the number to call when you want a response. Our Facebook page outlines how to do this. Our website outlines it. We've talked about it. But if you're not sure, 911 is perfectly acceptable. In a case like that, you want a quick response. And if you want us to respond, that's the way to go, either non-emergency or 911. If you want to talk to us about a case that we investigated that's old, that doesn't require an initial response, or you want background information on something, that's what the admin number is for. And then I have a couple of, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, one thing, there may be some confusion there. Of course, a lot of us have been told not to touch those 3 numbers unless somebody's life is in danger. But I was talking to one of your officers once, actually on a ride along, and I mentioned to him that that's what we're told to do. And he said, "Oh no, you shouldn't do that." So I'm just wondering if there's some confusion.
You should do what?
Call 911, unless it's bona fide, life and death emergency. So
Well,
there may be some confusion among the ranks. That's the only reason I'm mentioning that.
Well, the non-emergency number, the 573-2800 number, it all goes to the same place.
Mhm.
It's the same group of dispatchers. The point is that you want to get to the dispatch center. Now, we have a way to transfer you to the dispatch center, but that's only if our phones are being banned. And even Monday through Friday, if we have a secretary there or if she's not, we answer the phone. If we're not available, you're going to get voicemail. You're going to get the auto prompt. So we did have it set up that when you dialed our number and you needed to call 911, you could hit 1. The problem was we had a couple of incidents where we needed to track that number and we couldn't because it was bouncing off of our phone. And it looked like there was a problem at our building, right? So somebody called in and said, I'm being assaulted, and it looked like it was happening in our building. So we are looking at different options with that phone system, but the non-emergency or 911, and I'll definitely make sure that message gets relayed to the ranks. That's how you get a hold of us. You're going to see in the next couple of days, a couple of public safety announcements, and these are pretty important, and I would ask for any help that we could get to get this message out. Our agency, the Postal Service, County Police, U.S. Attorney's Office is working a handful of cases of check washing. Check washing is basically where somebody gets a hold of one of your checks, cleans it, turns it into one of theirs, and then has access to your account. They're calling the group that's doing this the red flag bandits. What we want to discourage people from doing is putting checks into your mailbox and lifting that red flag up to let the mailman know that you've got something out there. You want to avoid putting checks in the mail at all costs. You're very vulnerable that way. So this is a very active investigation, and I had to think twice about how I put this out without, saying too much. But I think the most important takeaway from this is if we can get the message out that we don't think it's a good idea to be putting checks in the mail. Which leads me to the next public safety announcement, which basically talks about public service announcement. So what's the next best way to pay your bills? We go online, right? We have we have banking apps on our phones. Another way that folks are getting access to us is they're sending text messages and emails with links at the bottom that say, your card has been compromised, click here, we'll help you get it fixed. The minute you click there, you're getting into your phone, and then they have it. So nobody's ever going to reach out to you that way. The other message is don't click on these links when you get these text messages. If you don't recognize it, or even if you have a Wells Fargo account and it's a Wells Fargo or it looks like a Wells Fargo text, if you get a message and you think you have a problem with your account, log into your account yourself and check or call. There's numbers that you can call for security on the banks and ask questions. Amazon gets hit a lot. So that's another form of theft that's happening right now at a really large scale, and it's hurting people. And if you're not covered to a certain extent, or if you don't do your due diligence before you make decisions, you may not be made whole by the bank. So anything we can do to get this message out, when we post it, share it, whatever we can do to get that out. I brought up the fact that we've updated our website. We're going to add the reports to that. Right now, the way the squads look are a little different. We've got some folks that are coming out of training now. So with the next few weeks, the squads will be set the way they look. And then last, we had a successful event with the backpack. They were gone within an hour. People continued to drop them off, so we dispersed them throughout the schools in Newcastle. Lend a Hand Save a Life was a huge hit. It was our second course where we're teaching hands-free CPR, mouth or hands-only CPR. And we're getting a lot of positive feedback, so we're going to continue with that. And that is all I have.
In terms of the mailing checks, I mean, there are some mostly smaller organizations that don't have online payment. If you're going to have to mail a check, it's safer if you take it into the post office and put it in their mail slot as opposed to putting it in the box on the street, and certainly safer than putting it in your own outdoor mailbox. Is that right?
Yeah, I think that would reduce the risk. It wouldn't eliminate the risk, but it would reduce it. So yes, that's a good point.
I'd like to ask Chief a question. Chief, where the Jack Markell Trail is,
There's one incident, this occurred between Delaware Street and Old Boulevard. Just between Delaware Street and just past the school, between Delaware Street and Old Boulevard. Yeah.
Thank you, Chief. Anything else, Mr. Parker?
Well, we have, thank you.
Thanks, sir. Business for the mayor. Mr. Mayor.
good evening, everybody. Hope everybody's doing well. Mr. Smith, I join you. I was absent last month too, so maybe the meetings, there certainly were shorter without me, I'm sure. I've got quite a bit I'd like to cover with you tonight, and I'll try to keep this as succinct as possible. But during the last month, I did a fair amount of travel, both for my full-time employer, the Delaware State Chamber of Commerce. And we are also the Delaware Manufacturing Association, the Delaware Retail Council. And I attended some national events with economists from several different business sectors, and I want to share with you some of what was discussed. I also was on a state economic development trip, and I'll touch on that briefly too. I gave to you a very small part of a larger deck that was given to all of us about workforce. And I'd like to cover that with you because I really think that this is a critically important topic for the city. I think we don't talk about it enough. The workforce as we knew it prior to the pandemic has completely changed, and it's not really going to change back to the way it was. We have a substantial number of percentage of the workforce, about 34%, who have the ability to work remote, and a substantial number of those employees are working remote or are coming into offices on a very limited basis. We know that female participation in the workforce hasn't returned to pre-pandemic levels, and that's in no small part due to the fact that the childcare industry has lost a substantial number of employees, and they've not returned. So the capacities are lower. We also know that the baby boom generation, of which I'm a part of, is been hitting retirement. We have 10,000 people a day in this country that reach retirement eligibility, and that's a trend that won't stop until 2029. 10,000 people a day until 2029. So people are leaving school systems, they're leaving nursing. So the capacities at our hospital, you'll hear that there are capacities, but the capacity is now a different number. Where it used to be 100 beds, capacity is now like the 80 beds. So I think for us, what does this mean for the five of you? I think it means that we have to talk about our workforce more regularly, and I think we have to be very intentional about it. That includes the folks that are here and the folks who are obviously not here. Employees want clean, safe, good technology, and they want a good, safe, clean place to work. We're in 6 different buildings. I've been in all 6, and I would invite you to visit all 6 if you've not been to all 6, most of which were never intended for the purposes that they serve. I would also tell you that they are deficient in many ways, and they're not helpful. Employees today and for the next 2 decades are going to expect things that are vastly different than what people have expected over the prior 40 years. Urban areas are transitioning. We're seeing this in Wilmington. There was over 1 million square feet of available office space prior to the pandemic. That number is almost doubled. So there's going to be this transition between office space and multifamily housing. People will move back to the cities because of affordability. The spaces are smaller. Interest rates have gone up, so affordability has become stressed. People aren't going to buy as big of homes in the future going forward because they can't afford it. And cities will become easier and more accessible, so we're going to watch people start, and so the trend is already starting to happen in some Western cities where people are starting to move back into the cities because they don't want to have long commutes from the exurbs. The face of retail shopping, we know, has changed. Now, we've got some boutique shops here in town, but we also have some big box store chains. We know that downtown boutique shops years ago were disrupted by strip malls by larger shopping centers by big box stores, and now online platforms. All of that is disrupted, all of them, and that's going to continue to change. 20% of food, groceries in China are delivered via platforms. People don't go to the store, they order it online. There's also several communities that have experienced and have tried community purchasing. Everybody in this room decided they wanted an iPhone. If there's 5,000 people in the city, we get 500, but if 1,000 people decided to buy an iPhone, we would get a much better price if we bought at scale. There are communities that are experimenting with this both on hard goods, durable goods, but also perishables. 20%, so I said that. Best Buy. I mentioned this online. Best Buy,
visited with the CEO of Best Buy at their headquarters. She's very impressive. They're moving quickly into healthcare. Healthcare, because healthcare delivery and their support of all the devices that they're going to have in terms of wearable technology and home care is going to be substantial. The pilgrimage to the doctor's office is in large part going to be over by about 2025, 26, as people do more and more virtual visits.
So when we think about our own self-sufficiency and our own community, we think of our critical workforce. And what stands out to me are a couple things that are unique to our community and very important to our community. One is the police department. We're supposed to be staffed at 18. I don't know if everybody saw the paper from Tuesday. I'm sure the chief did. Delaware police forces face staff shortages. They're not immune to the problem. This is a challenge for all cities. Philadelphia is down, I think, 800 or 900 police officers. And then people will wonder why crime is rampant. We have in our midst a very important asset that needs to be maintained, and it needs to be staffed, and it needs to be focused on. And our benefit packages need to be as good or better than the standard. Because if that asset goes away, the ratio in Newcastle County is 1 police officer for every 1,577 people. If you do the math here, the ratio is much, much, much lower.
In the 400s.
I didn't do the math, but it's actually pretty small. But we also do know this, during the day, when you fill up Center Point, and you fill up Cherry Lane, and you fill up Twin Spans, we are no longer a community of 5,500. Say 1,500 or 2,000 people go out to work, well, another 10,000 come in and fill all these workplaces. And it's even busier on Fridays when you start filling up the farmer's market with guests. So we ask an awful lot, and it's something that we need to think about. Similarly, our public works, our energy and water service providers and servicers are critical to our future. We all appreciate the fact that when the power goes off or the water gets shut down, it's back up right away. That is an enormous asset, and we need to think about the employees there, because those skilled trades are in dire. There are construction companies that are doing their best to steal from one another, and they're offering wages that are 25 to 40% higher than the last place people quit. And one of the pages that I shared with you shows quit rates, and it also shows how people don't return to their present employer. They go someplace else, and the amount of money that they're making with their next job is quite substantial. Those trades, we spent 40 years telling everybody to go to college, and we didn't tell people that it was important to go to trade school. Well, we're paying for it. The bell is rung, and now we can hear it written. And so those people are in high demand. Skilled electricians, skilled linemen, skilled people that work with water. I say that because we need to invest heavily in our people. And I think we've got to also consider the fact that our workplace also needs to be refreshed. It is Urban Studies 101, folks. You don't put government buildings on your main street. That is the first thing I learned in college when I took my first Urban Studies class. You don't do that. If you do that, you do it only because you're desperate and you don't have anything else to fill the place. Labor Day weekend, I went across the Delaware Memorial Bridge, and I spent a good 20 minutes, Rod Miller will understand, in beautiful Salem, New Jersey. It is a sad place with some historic treasures that are largely all boarded up. The line between viable and vacant is pretty thin. So yes, we need somebody to do tourism. I will just tell you, though, I think that's a much lower priority than making sure that we have our police department for energy and water utility and other services taken care of first. We need to be intentional about every single bit of this. The other, if you wouldn't mind, which other document I want to share with you? Oh, Also, would also say that I think it's important that we maintain regular communications with Colonial School District. Some rather provocative predictions that were made by people who are looking at trend data, not just nationally, but in different regions, including the Mid-Atlantic and including Delaware. Public school enrollment is likely to drop an additional 15% within the next 10 years. That's because you have declining birth rates. These are not guesses. If you're not born, you don't count in the world of demography. And so we have fewer and fewer people. So we need to stay laser focused on our school populations and what that means to the community if these places go away. I'd also suggest that we maintain a solid rental housing code and keep up our enforcement as we're doing, but we can always do better and think about the people that we're putting on that task. More people are renting today than just about any time, and the trend is not going to stop because of housing affordability. There's going to be a decrease, an expected decrease in the next 10 years of home ownership by about 10%. Rental housing is where people are going. If you've got young adult children, 24, 22, and 20, they want the flexibility to move in, move out, pull the door closed, not worry about maintenance. We now have seniors who don't want to take care of a house. They just want to live in the garrison. They want to live over at the helm. They want to pull the door closed and they want to leave. They don't want the hassle of home ownership. Gone is the lawnmower, gone is the weed whacker, and I'm one of them. And I'm happy as hell, to be very honest. Before I moved here, I was on 26 acres. I did my part for maintaining a large property. All of that is to say, there's a lot that's changing before us, and these disruptions are going to come more frequently. They're going to be more dramatic, and they're going to have implications for our community as well. I would urge all of you to pay very close attention to the staffing at the police department and the staffing with our water and our electric utility in particular. All right, there is plenty of backup here, which comes from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. It comes from a number of credible sources, and you can take a look at that yourself. A couple of other quick points on different subjects. I had the pleasure of touring the charter school of Newcastle. Joe, if you would be kind enough to that one right there. Yes, please. And I did that with Delaware Education Secretary Mark Polnick last week. We met with the leadership of the school. For those of you that don't know where this is, you have Cherry Lane and down Lucas back there. It's served under several different names in the past. There are 768 children that call that their school. 768 and growing. K through 8. Their test scores under the new leadership, which you can see, and I'll hand these out so you guys can see them too, have improved. It is a majority minority school. We draw from the surrounding area. The kids matriculate typically not so much to William Penn, but to a lot of private schools. They're doing a very, very good job. The kids are on scholarship. It's majority minority. Come also as far away as Newark. They've got an interesting model. Behavioral issues are down. A lot of employers back there are starting to partner with that school, and it's quite a success story. I'm a member, Joe, the other one there, please, the last one. Member of the State Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Planning Committee. We've had 2 meetings. The handouts are online. I'll pass this around here for folks to see if you like. There's an awful lot of discussion about putting in infrastructure and trying to figure out where, given our current power grid and where population densities are, and what people's expectations are for EV locations around the state. The state has deployed a lot of level 2 chargers. They're now in the process of superchargers, which are fast chargers that you see at some fast food and welcome centers on interstates. Art along the Jam Trail, the Jack A. Markell Trail. I've been asked by the county executive to serve on a panel. They got some money from the Economic Development Administration in Washington, which is part of the Department of Commerce, about art in public spaces, and so I will keep you apprised of that. I haven't been to a meeting yet. The tenants at Center Point are asking for the widening of Route 273 from Mason Road all the way up to the Farmers Market. Traffic considerations are a big concern for the folks coming in and out of there.
I did a tour 2 weeks ago of Amazon. If you've noticed, there's far fewer vans running around town. That's because they've moved to the flex model. So it's quite interesting. Any of us could raise our hand, become a part-time contractor for Amazon. You go online, you'll say, I'll take something in 19720. You show up, packages in the greater 19720 are set aside for you. You wheel it out to your car, you put it in your car, and you go. And there are people that are doing that and make some money here and there. Just filling in a few hours here and there on their own pace at their own time. Fascinating business model.
And I will close on a lighter note. And that is, we have our last movie of the year. That will be this Saturday in Battery Park. Ask you to arrive at 7:15. The movie starts at 7:30. So with that, present, thank you.
Question, who did you say was asking for the widening of 273?
Several of the tenants within the Center Point office park area, the industrial park.
The city asked for that in our transportation plan, and they rejected, DelDOT rejected that, saying there isn't enough traffic, and anybody who is sat in that traffic on 273 has a hard time handling that. If the tenants of Center Park Point would go a little further and call the
They are asking,
Secretary of Transportation.
they're asking us if we would pen a letter to DelDOT and bring it back up and do it again. I just feel like we should do it. I think we should be on the record. If you're willing, I'm willing to take the pen, or I don't know if Mr. Barthel, I mean, I know we have other
Sure.
issues before DelDOT.
Flatly no by
Right.
DelDOT.
No, I get it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Excuse me, Mr. Platt, just so council is aware, next month, WMACO is slated, I believe, to be here to make that presentation.
Should be a good meeting. Mr. Mayor, while you're at the podium, do you want to do your proclamation for Constitution Week?
I can do that.
Be here. You have that.
This is a proclamation commemorating the 235th anniversary of the drafting of the Constitution of the United States of America and declaring the week September 17th through 23rd, 2022, as Constitution Week in the city of Newcastle. Whereas it is the privilege and duty of the American people to commemorate the 235th anniversary of the drafting of the Constitution of the United States of America with appropriate ceremonies and activities. And whereas Public Law 915 guarantees the issuing of a proclamation each year by the President of the United States of America designating September 17th through 23rd as Constitution Week. Now therefore, I, Michael J. Quaranta, by virtue of the authority vested in me as mayor of the city of Newcastle, do hereby proclaim the week of September 17th through 23rd as Constitution Week, and urge all citizens to study the Constitution and reflect on the privilege of being an American with all the rights and responsibilities which that privilege involves. In witness whereof, I have hereunto set my hand and caused the seal of the city to be affixed the 14th day of September, year of our Lord 2022.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a few things. I attended the trust meeting last week, and I just wanted to let everybody know, if you haven't heard already, that the trust wants to return maintenance back to the rightful owners of the Battery Park, back to the city. So I don't know what their plans are they said they wanted some kind of decision made by March of 2023. So I just want everybody to be aware that that falls in their court, and they're discussing it right now.
Did they make any
They gave no reason,
decision?
no.
No.
No,
So that was just discussion.
Well, it was brought up to start moving in that direction. I think it put it over to the Battery Park Committee, and the Battery Park Committee's going to look at it, bring it back to the full board. Thank you. We understand. I'm just making sure everybody knows.
And what do they want from us by March?
They want us to take over maintenance of the
No,
park.
but by March, what do they?
That's when they want to make their decision.
Oh, okay.
So I'm just saying negotiations will probably start very soon with on their end and then with on our end. And there's a lot entailed that happening, so I don't know what's going to happen. Let's just say that way.
I know I heard the date, I just wasn't sure
Right.
what was by then.
Isn't there, and correct me if I'm wrong, somebody, if you know, wasn't it done in 1930 something, 1940 something by charter that they would, yeah, it was legislatively done. So it's not like we can just make a decision on the spot.
That is correct.
That has to be a charter change,
Right.
or that charter, or that charter, because it's separate from the city charter.
And that wasn't brought up at the meeting, but they did ask Mr. Lawyers,
Taylor.
Amy Taylor, to look into the legal aspects of it. So like I said, it's going to be a lot of negotiation going on. I just want everybody to be aware of it. Okay?
But I should bring up that there are a number of issues facing Battery Park right now. There is the playground, and has that been coordinated with the trustees? There is a bicycle plan that calls for putting bicycle paths right through it's the city bicycle plan that we haven't approved, putting bicycle paths right through the park. There is another path that was part of the sewer project, still is part of the sewer project, that would follow the trail of the railroad, Frenchtown Railroad.
That one's been washed, I understand.
I heard that was watched, but
The trust isn't going to allow it.
I
They're
then,
not going to fund it there.
I then heard that the end of the sewage drainage project is part of that. There may be somebody here who could speak to that, but I won't. I'll let them hear. And one other thing, there's talk about the stage that we have now. Does that need to be replaced? Does that need to be in a permanent place? There's a lot of discussion going on about Battery Park, and the trustees really have to do some comprehensive planning for Battery Park.
Well, and that's it, but if they turn it back over to us, then it's all house stuff, that's what I'm saying. So
Well,
and there is a lot going on, and some of it's rumor, some of it isn't. Nothing's been brought from this body to discuss it. So like the Frenchtown Railroad, that was brought up for a grant, but my understanding it's washed. So I mean, there is a lot, yes, Mr. Davis.
Was there a reason it's being brought up now?
I have to trust.
Yes.
No, that's how they ended their meeting. I was actually a little surprised when it happened. So I'm just letting everybody know what happened at that meeting. So just start preparing for.
Obviously, if that happens, it's a big budgetary number for the city to overcome in a
Absolutely,
short amount of time.
absolutely. Not unplugging equipment, so forth. So, but I just want everybody to know that. And then the last thing is, I was asked by a resident on Bull Hill for a speed bump on the street. Council wants to look into it, do a traffic study. Just we'll get back to that one. I just brought that up. So it's a complaint made to me. Okay. Thank you. We'll have public comments now. We'll keep them to 3 minutes. When you come up to the podium, please introduce yourself and sign the book and let us know where you live.
Sorry for dragging my feet. My name is Victor Bryson, 604 Clark Street, Allenville. Come here tonight just to speak on the park again. You guys need to really rethink that $1 million park you want to put on our Battery Park. Okay? The park at Bull Hill's got all brand new mulching. The one in Donville is full of mold. Okay, there's too many parks in this town for you to invest in $1 million into that park. I talked to all the trustee members. I'm gonna tell you straight up to your faces, they're fed up with all of us. They're done with you giving this town away. That park has pissed a lot of them off. You people want to give it, tell Nicole Ford to take that park down her house. See how she likes it. She wants to give $500,000 to Boothurst. She wants to continue to give you people money to make all this happen. Tell her to take it where she lives at, because the people in this town don't want it. The trust members don't want it. Hundreds and thousands of people in this town don't want it, but you're not listening. You can laugh all you want, Valerie,
I'm not
but you'll find out election time. Guarantee you that.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Sir? Mr. Roy, okay. You'll be next, sir.
I'd like a little more than 3 minutes.
We're going to limit it to 3 minutes tonight. sir.
What's that?
Yeah, we're going to limit it to 3
Okay,
minutes.
It's in regard to the Board of Adjustment,
Okay,
which it was my idea to have a town Board of Adjustment. I had Joe Day over to my house. I don't want any credit for it, but I appreciate you approving it, but you didn't go far enough. And I'm just wondering, I spoke with officials in Ellesmere, Newark, and Middletown. Now, their requirement, and I'm going to get the mayor, Lasco, and Bergson in on it. I spoke with all the officials there, and I said, guess what? Our town, and then they didn't know why. Our town has the mayor as the chairman. No official in those 3 towns are allowed to be on this board. Now, we're just wondering, if anyone here contacted them to find out why. No elected official. No elected official. Now, Jeff and our planner, Rogers, sat on the Board of Adjustment in Newark. Correct? Okay, you sat there. We're spending, and I brought it up, I was hoping to hear from you by now. So, I'm down on you a little bit now. You never got back to me. And I'll tell you, I alter your face. The mayor, Lasco, and Bergson all told me they didn't see a need for this new board. Everything was working good. That's baloney. It wasn't working good. I was on the Board of Adjustment in Pennsville probably when you were in grade school, almost 40 years ago. They were all citizens. Do you believe in democracy? I do. I spent 4 years. Prove it, okay? I believe it. A town, an old town like this, one of the oldest towns in the state. It's the first time we've had a citizens board. The engineer and the attorney were out of town voters. You call that democracy? I don't. And by the way, we're spending $800. Joe, you were gonna check on it. You let me.
Roy, your time's up.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
You ought to thank me for giving it a little democracy in this town.
Your time's up.
You know, that's alone. Cut me
Sir.
off like that. You're a disgrace, you know? Where is Linda Rasper?
She's on the strand.
Yeah, I know she is. She should be in your seat
Hello,
How you doing?
life is good. Hello, everybody. Beautiful day.
Introduce yourself, sir, please.
Huh?
Introduce yourself.
My name is David Collins. I live in Dalvinsville.
get into history myself shortly, but I'd like to recognize the chief here for his website. It is phenomenal. It is totally, completely, utterly usable. I was on 6 hours today tapping stuff in there. It's coming to your outsource program also for Dobbins. Again, my name is Dave Connell. My family owned a house since 1943 in the 700 block of Clymer Street. My grandparents had it, took it over late 60s. I took it over in 99. So, veteran verified, lifetime resident, Youngsville. We've been around for a long time, in and out of this place. I'd like to let everybody know that I want to start researching Dobbsville history for the purpose of putting it on the National Registry, making it part of the National Registry program. You know, we have here finally a federal funded or taken care of program for the park system. My understanding has it that the neighborhood was built by the federal government, the very first one in the United States of America, and has quite a bit of history to it. So I'm gonna start working on that just for fun. It's gonna take a while. Secondly, had some issues with government here recently, and that's why I spent 6 hours on the website today, getting in great detail of that, which is very cool. You guys set that up. I appreciate that. So I just did it today, this morning. So your officer that handles Dobbsville will be getting that. How you doing? So I'm not a punitive guy, but in the end of the charter here in the city, state's code of conduct, something about equal and fair treatment. So sometimes people in that neighborhood don't feel that in the city. So hopefully we get that changed. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
My name's Bill Emery, I'm from Bolton. Few things to remind you, every month until the year's coming, the red light. Remind you guys again, red light's coming. The anniversary is next month, I believe. I guess DelDOT's coming to talk to us all about it, I assume, right? Like we're gonna be making a decision on what we're gonna do,
Pretty much.
I guess. Anyway, again, just remind everybody, if that red light goes away and we put stop signs there, the intersection stays the same. The curb work, the blacktop sidewalks, and they put stop signs in. If we decide to put a red light there, we can still keep it flashing red and keep it a stop and go. DelDOT would come in, do blacktop, new curbs, new sidewalks. We have the luxury of making it green and red at leisure, our control. We get all that work done. Again, if we don't do that and we decide to just take the light away, we another issue that I've been back and forth with City Council for the last year probably is the 3rd Street and 3rd and Delaware Street stop sign. I've been debating this back and forth about the people running the stop sign there. I've been back there over the past week or so. I'm still watching these people run the stop sign Very recently, while I was up there twice, I almost saw pedestrians almost get hit by vehicles running the stop sign. Nothing's being done about it. Again, I'm not the one going to get hit by the car because I pay attention, just reminding the city about it. One of the park playground equipment, I applaud the people working on that project. It's fantastic. I have some problems with the ideas they want to do there, a zip line. Some of the equipment wants to be made out of wood. Spent my whole life in the construction industry. Wood is a problem waiting to happen. It just doesn't last long out in the weather, causes problems with upkeep, who's going to have the maintenance on it, who's going to do the inspection on it, something to think about. So just another issue. But again, I'm all for it. I'd like to see it progress. It's just a few things that need to be thought about. Another item, EV charging stations around town. The only charging stations I see being used are the ones over there in the parking spot off of 3rd Street. Everything else not being used. So
Thank you, Mr.
that's good. Thank you.
I'm going to offer a quick rebuttal.
Mr. Mayor, if I could interrupt you,
Sure.
please.
Yes.
That's been settled. That issue's been settled. I didn't understand that rant. And as far as I'm concerned, let's just move forward, but I will give you the floor, sir.
I just wanted just a couple quick seconds because I think it's important just to.
Quick seconds, remember that.
Yeah, I get it.
I know your seconds.
So there are over 80,000 units of local government. They are referred to as the laboratories of democracy for good reason. There are lots of different models handling the Board of Adjustment. Our Board of Adjustment, I think, worked quite well for several decades. One of the tests is you can make decisions where they appeal to the go to Superior Court, the city have to spend an untold amount of money because decisions were somehow flawed. And the answer is unequivocal no. It's a judicial proceeding. It's not a policy-making proceeding. It's a judicial proceeding. And I think you have to ask yourself one very important question. This is what, and I disagree with the folks here, but do you want people who live next door to you serving on a board where they make judgments about your property? That can go very well or it could go very poorly. By bringing people in from outside who are technical professionals, you now have jurists who are far more independent than could otherwise be with a board that is a judicial proceeding that would otherwise have to make decisions about your personal life.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We allowed to do that. Right. That matter is just settled. Thank you. I agree with your opinions. Next.
Good evening. A few things. One, concerning the red light, you're wrong. I spoke and got email that they can reduce the number of poles at that intersection to 1 pole, and they did agree to any work that needed to be done in that intersection, including repaving it to its original finished.
Or you live in a fantasy world because this body
Well,
sat here. This
okay.
body sat here and
Everybody's
it was
in a
discussed,
fantasy
okay?
world.
And
other
just like
than
you said, it wouldn't work.
You're
It's
wrong.
worked perfect.
You're wrong.
Okay, you say.
You're wrong. But getting a free light, because that's exactly what was stated, sounds like a win-win deal to me. And you personally can control it, and the chief, if needed, or the fire company, for parade, whatever.
We will soon have a report from
Okay.
LDOT.
But anyway.
We can debate it then.
Okay, thank you. As far as the first, we need to do the sea rise issues. They need to be addressed first before we talk about building a $10 million municipal campus. I'll keep bringing it up because for some reason it keeps getting sugar coated. But you know what? We need this other stuff. But you know what? If the water goes over it, floods the city, you don't need a municipal campus. So if you guys want to bill each resident, it comes out to about $1,300 for that $10 million campus. And now we're going to have the trustees turn over the park. And Mike Alfrey said it wasn't going to be discussed March 2023. That's when it will be turned over to the city. So whatever you guys have to do to fit it in the budget, I'd have another budget meeting and figure out where that money's going to come from. Maybe from the municipal campus. Playground. I have no knowledge of anything in regards to why the trustees want to turn the park over, but they don't want to take responsibility of any new playground equipment. So that's another expense you're gonna have to make sure gets in the line item. So again, I just think when you're looking to spend our money, be a little more judicious with it.
Have a nice day.
That's
Next.
a good attitude.
Just for the general good, the city is not considering a $10 million
That's a lot.
municipal. Excuse me?
Sit down, Mr. Smith, sit down. Let him go.
Yeah, you know,
Mr.
I mean,
Smith,
yep.
Mr. Smith.
Yep.
Consider the source. Let's move forward. Ma'am, could you state your name and address, please?
Yes.
Weekly.
Oh, yeah.
Hi, hello, everyone. I am Lizzie Zubaka. I live on 55 West Fifth Street. I strongly support a new playground in Battery Park. I became a new parent last year and increasingly enjoy the need outdoor play areas for my 1-year-old daughter, particularly during COVID-19. My family and I are very proud members of the Newcastle community. Our favorite activity is to go for walks in the park and play on the Battery Park playground. And that's something that we do every single day and sometimes multiple times a day. While these walks bring great joy to our family, we can't help but to notice that the equipment is old and outdated, especially compared to other playgrounds in the county. As parents, we all want the best for our kids. And I find myself wondering, why can't we have a new playground here for our kids, just like other cities have new playgrounds for their kids? I strongly support and encourage the trustees and council to work together to update the outdated playground equipment in Battery Park so our kids can have a new state of the art and safe playground equipment for us to enjoy for years to come. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, Rod Miller, East Third Street. Yeah, I just wanted to make a quick comment. Something I've been thinking about for a while now with this thing coming up with the intersection at 6 in Delaware. I don't know if this ever brought up before. I don't know if it's a good idea. I think it's something to think about, but I remember when I used to live in New Jersey, they at one point in Pennsville on Route 49, they switched from regular traffic light to a flashing stop sign. Now, I wouldn't necessarily recommend that because it was pretty garish, and I mean, you could see it flashing a mile away, and I'm not suggesting you do something like that, but I mean, it may be something to think about. I'd like to hear any feedback anybody would have if it comes down to it. If it's decided to go ahead, and remove the light. With modern technology, there's like with LED lights, there's a lot of different things you can do I've just been thinking, maybe some people, like I now, every time I make sure I come to a full, complete stop. And I'm always looking around to see what everybody else does. And all this time, I've only seen one person blow through a stop sign. And he did it. He could have hit me, but a couple weeks ago, he was making believe he was going to stop, and then he zoomed on. But that's the only time. And that could really happen anywhere, at any time. But what do you think about maybe the possibility of, if you decide to get rid of the light, of maybe putting some kind of a light there that wouldn't necessarily irritate the people that live around there, like flashing on light, but something, some type of a light on the stop signs themselves. Just keep it in mind that maybe people come from out of town, or even locals who maybe, I don't know, I think there's something maybe psychological about that red light there. That maybe does make people think, oh yeah, we have to slow down, or we have to stop. I don't know. I mean, is that something to think about? I think maybe, but again, I don't really know, what exactly would would be the best way to go about it, but it might be something to think about. Maybe like, provided that, I'm not suggesting you run up cost or anything, of course. But I don't know, it's been suggested to me that the electric for something like that is really, the cost is negligible. I don't know if that's, true or not. But anyway, just something to think about. Maybe if it comes to it and the city has just gone with a 4-way stop sign, maybe there might be a way to put some kind of a light on the signs themselves. Just something to kind of reinforce that, hey, you got to stop here without going to all the trouble and expense, of having a light. Just something I was thinking about.
Mr. Miller, just a quick question. Do you know who owns that intersection?
Do I know who owns the intersection? I hadn't really thought about it lately. Is it the city?
PhilDOT. It's the state.
PhilDOT owns, well, what do you mean by the
They own
intersection?
the
You mean
street, 6th Street,
they own it?
Six.
Okay,
and the
All right.
intersection.
well, good. And they can pay for something like
And-
this, right?
Like I said, like Mr. Smith said, there's gonna be a study. We're gonna get a report.
Okay, just wanted to make that comment,
Let's
just
see-
in
let's
case
see
the
what
lights are moved.
experts say.
Okay. All right.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Good evening, ma'am.
My name's Carol Caspin, and I live on 4th Street. And I'm speaking in behalf of the playground and all the work that's been done to hopefully create a new one. My kids went there, now my grandkids go there. Now they want to go to a different city or a different area because there's more to do in those parks and on the facilities. All they want to do is climb. They'll walk, they'll do their little biking. Bottom of the line, they want to go play in a really modern playground. And yes, the components that are used in making that playground are very important. And there's a whole committee working that I'm sure would be happy to hear some concerns or some ideas.
Excuse me, Mr. Price, don't interrupt. Don't interrupt. You had your time, nobody interrupted you.
I'm answering her question. She's looking.
You don't have that right to answer a question.
Excuse me, I'm
Her
sorry.
kids ain't gonna get to play on it anyway.
You don't-
Who cares what county's gonna play on it? Okay, I'll tell it like
Pardon?
it is.
For the
Okay,
record.
that's all right. I'm actually speaking to the man that talked about his concerns about materials. And we have a whole committee that I'm sure would like to hear from you. And we have other professionals they're working with to put it together. But I thought tonight, we're all here and we're all aging. I had my kids, now I got my grandkids. The only thing that's going to keep this city going is bringing in young families. And what brings in young families are things for those kids to do, like the woman who just spoke that has a 1-year-old. If we don't have activities for them or places where they can spend their day, they're not coming. And we're just going to be a city of old people, and we're not going to get any more revenue, and there's going to be real problems, and the city's going to die. And that's crushing. We need young blood coming in the park and the playground is one way to bring it. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening. My name is Brian Madaway, live at 628 Delaware Street. To the mayor, the council, everybody, fellow residents, Lottie, Dottie, and everybody. Earlier this week, I submitted a letter to the editor of the weekly. I stand before you saying that I wrote it. I meant what I wrote. I say what I mean. I'm here to stand 10 toes down and proclaim it. To council and to the mayor, you will receive an email copy of this letter to the editor. A copy of the letter will also be submitted to the trustees of Newcastle Commons. I will have completed my duty at fatherhood, and my children will be ready to take on all that life has to offer if I'm successful in conveying 3 core principles. The tenets are as follows: legacy. Good, bad, or indifferent, you will be remembered for those whose path you cross. You may never know how much your words, actions, or deeds encourage or discourage a person. Dare to be extraordinary, not ordinary. Only what you do for others will last. If you want better, do better. Faith. Carry the love of Christ in your heart, mind, body, and spirit. You don't always have to tell people what you think. The cream always rises to the top. There go I before the grace that was given unto me. Trust in the good that everyone can become. Purpose. Life is about experiences. You will have some good days, and yes, you will have some bad. Total it all up and hope that the good outweighs the bad. Laugh, smile, cry. Never take yourself so serious. Nobody is better than you, and you are no better than anybody else. Fellow residents, what is our individual and collective legacy, faith, and purpose, and duty? We are now at a tipping point and cannot remain lukewarm. We will find our most valuable asset, a term that I just coined, called GHNCP, Gross Historic Newcastle Product, affectionately known as your children, my children, you and me. I'll phrase it another way: love, kindness, joy, and peace. Let us find solidarity and truth in knowing that we were all once children. Build a playground and do it not begrudgingly. Let the playground be a symbol for all to see our faith, legacy, purpose, and duty. We are all Old Newcastle, little and tall. Sincerely yours, Brian Mattaway.
Thank you, sir. Do we have anyone else? Sir?
Smile, he might be doing a sketch of us.
Spotlight on me.
That's the mayor.
So my name is Dennis Young, and I am the proprietor at the gallery at the corner of Second and Delaware. By the way, the idea of that flashing red light is attractive to me because it's attractive.
Well timed.
Let's start that over again. It's attractive to me because at that corner, it is infamous that cars go through that intersection coming up from the wharf. At least 40% of the time do not stop. They may slow down up into another gear, but it's an accident waiting to happen. Anyhow, I do usually dress this way, but I dress this way tonight to make the point about bringing attention to something that needs attention. And tourism, I think, in this town could stand some more attention. This is a copy of the Out and About magazine distributed to stores in Wilmington around the area. And they see that there is an advertisement for the Rivertown Rides that's going to be held in October. And there's barely a mention of Newcastle in this. And I think if there were somebody who was a tourism director whose singular focus is to be obsessed with bringing attention, bringing visitors, bringing something of value to the residents in town, I think a person like that would be right on something like this and make sure that you put Newcastle in the spotlight and get people in town to be even more proud of what we have to offer to ourselves and visitors, and bring more people into town, more money into town, more value to the town too when you go to sell your property. So I think a person like this would be a person in such a position as a tourism czar would be a good person who would have experience and understanding about event planning, about maybe grant writing, about thinking outside of the box, looking for ideas about what can make what we have already even better, events that we have already even better, and perhaps bringing new events in too. The separation day that we had last time was a great success, but downtown Newcastle was a ghost town. And maybe a person in that kind of a business doing tourism would be giving thought to what else could be done to also drive traffic through the center of town, both to be exploring the other buildings in town, but also going to businesses. So that's what I wanted to say.
Thank you, Dr. Young. Anybody else? Good evening, ladies.
Evening.
My name is Abigail Millett, and I'm supporting the pregnancy. I'm interested in friends in the park, but we usually don't really have much to do but walk around because we think the playground isn't really the best playground and it could be.
Thank you. Somebody else? Someone's a little shy.
I live right around the corner on Fifth. My name is Lindsay. These are my girls. So we live in town. We're a younger family that moved in, and to her point, there needs to be things here to do for all age groups. So just wanted to say that we support the playground.
Thank you. Anyone else? Captain Moore? Mr. Smith, I'm going to suspend the 3-minute time limit just because Captain Moore has a report in the firehouse. So I want to make sure we get all the information.
Good evening, everybody. Tim Moore with the Global Fire Company. Tonight, I just have a few things. We had just promoted senior firefighter Ben Orley to captain. Ben was hired in 2005, 17 years on the job. He oversees equipment maintenance and the apparatus maintenance. So with that being said, Captain Scheffler, who's been with us for probably 19 years, he was just awarded the Delaware Heroic Firefighter of the Year. And that is for his actions on the water rescue that took place in the area of the Delaware River and Delaware City Refinery. So much good comes out. They're both good guys, and they do a lot for the community and for the fire company. Tonight, I have a piece of apparatus that I brought over, kind of like the show, tell a little bit about. It's our new ladder truck. It currently replaces a 1996 ladder that we have. Although it's not in service just yet, it's in the training works of it, so you see it around town. It will block a street or two. This is all for training purposes to make sure that we are comfortable with it and we're able to use it appropriately when the time comes. With this piece here, we added a few things to the city. We incorporated the city flag on it. We also incorporated on the bucket of the ladder, the colonial, the courthouse, and on the back of a mud flap in the colonial letter. So that is something new to our fleet in reference to incorporating to that, and for future apparatuses, we'll be doing the same thing. The Global Fire Company had applied for a SAFER grant, which is staffing for adequate fire and emergency response. We were just informed that that was awarded to us for the amount of $417,000. That is over a three-year time. At the end of that time, the Global Fire Company will sustain 2 full-time people, and that's what that money goes to. So out of that $417,000, that was for 2 full-time personnel, and the fire company will, at the end of that time, they will sustain those 2 extra people. So that will give us 5 people on during the day, which helps us out tremendously with how the call volume is definitely increasing. And lastly, open house is right around the corner. It is in October 29th. It's the last Saturday in October, and it's from 12 to 3. As more information becomes available with the open house, we'll get it out on the website, in the weekly, and next month, if I'm here, which it should be, I'll bring it up again, just to remind you. So, now.
Thank you, Captain Moore. Moving on to new business. We're going to get a comprehensive plan update. Mr. Rogers, would you like to give that to us, please?
Thank you, Mr. President, members of council. Chris Rogers with AECom. What you have in front of you is the comprehensive plan annual update that was prepared by the Planning Commission in June and forwarded to the Office of State Planning and Coordination. This annual update is required by state law, which requires municipalities to provide the Office of State Planning Coordination a report describing implementation of the comprehensive plan and identifying development issues, trends, or conditions since the plan was last adopted. So we do this annually and forward it on to the Office of State Planning. And the report, or the annual report, the state provides a form, and it really asks you to complete 4 questions. The first is review the recommendations, goals, and implementation items within your comprehensive plan and provide and indicate which items are complete, underway, or not yet started. So the Planning Commission looked at the recently adopted 2020 comprehensive plan, looked at all of the goals in the comprehensive plan, and we discussed the status of each goal, and you'll see that in the report that's in front of you. There are goals provided in each element of the comprehensive plan. So for example, on the first page, a G4.1, that's a goal from chapter 4, which is the land use element of the comprehensive plan. The goals associated with 6, like the G6s, are infrastructure. So the Planning Commission looked at each goal and decided which goal they needed to provide an update on. And that's what you have in front of you. I'm not going to go over each one unless anybody has any questions. Towards,
Yes, very well. It's very well done. I was on the planning commission when we revised the comprehensive plan, and I was hoping that we would actually use the plan as a guide to our actions, and this seems to show that that's being done.
yeah, Planning Commission took considerable time and effort to go through it carefully. They should be commended for the effort that they took here. The second to last page is really question number 2, where they ask to highlight any significant accomplishments, development issues, trends, or conditions since the plan was adopted. And the Planning Commission just kind of gave a generic response there. The third question in the annual report that is asked of the state is, are there any planning issues that the municipality is currently facing? Do you anticipate any comprehensive plan changes for which the Office of State Planning may be able to offer assistance? And that's where the Planning Commission decided to speak to the amount of cut-through traffic and roadway flooding on Route 9 and the conversations that the city's been having with DelDOT. And their Planning Commission states the city always appreciates the assistance offered by the Office of State Planning and will reach out when necessary. Lastly, the question 4 is really just the state saying, offering their technical assistance, planning help, and funding for resiliency related projects as they arrive throughout the year. And the Planning Commission just stated that the city is open and interested in discussing ways that the state could help implement the plan, and we will reach out when necessary. So the Planning Commission approved this at their June meeting, and it was forwarded shortly thereafter to the Office of State Planning.
Question, Mr. Rogers? Okay, thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Moving on to the next agenda item is council discussion, motion, and vote on resolution 2022-27, a resolution to approve Comcast franchise agreement. We have a motion to read the resolution.
Second.
Whereas the city of Newcastle financial franchise agreement with Comcast of Newcastle, Elton County, LLC has come up for renewal, and whereas the city has engaged the Cohen Law Group to negotiate the terms of renewal of the franchise agreement with Comcast of Newcastle County, LLC, and whereas the franchise agreement for its construction, operation, and maintenance of cable system encompassing the present and future city limits on the terms and conditions set forth in the documents attached known as the Comcast franchise agreement. Whereas the Common Law Group has provided City Council with a detailed memorandum outlining the stellar points of the Comcast franchise agreement. Now therefore, let it be resolved that the City of Newcastle hereby accepts Comcast franchise agreement with Comcast of Newcastle County LLC as negotiated by Common Law Group and authorizes a city administrator to execute on the same behalf of the city. Any questions on this? Councilman Sexton?
I remember when we discussed this earlier, we were wondering if we could get the issue of buried cables incorporated into this franchise agreement. Not so much that they would do it all immediately, but that as the city was burying the other utility lines, the cable companies would carry the expense of burying their cable lines along with the others. Was that discussed?
Ms. Souter, I can respond to that to some degree. I wasn't involved in the negotiations, but I have looked at the COA Group's memorandum, and they distinguish between Comcast, which is a cable operator, versus Verizon, which is a public utility. As a public utility, they won't agree to remove, they won't waive any rights to be forced to be placing utility lines underground. Comcast has, the agreement with Comcast provides more extensive right-of-way protections, and they're more negotiable on the issue. But Verizon's going to be steadfast that they want their pole.
What about at least, 4th Street is a really good example when someone moves in and gets new cable or, internet or whatever. They don't remove the previous lines. They kind of wrap them up on a pole, and now we've got spaghetti on all the poles.
I've asked that question a number of times, and I was told that would be brought up in the negotiations, that wait till we get to the negotiations, so. I'd like to
Well, I
know-
can address that.
Okay.
Okay, and so it's not specifically addressed in the franchise agreement per se, but what we did was, Furio and I met with representatives, the government representatives from both Comcast and Verizon about the issue. And we made it clear that these were concerns, and those wires you're talking about are primarily Verizon wires. Comcast had some issues, but they're not nearly as extensive, if you will. And so we made it clear, as I said, that, so now we have a direct connect, so that when we did call people before, it tended to go into a black hole. And so, like I said, we took the opportunity of having this negotiation, or the timing of this negotiation, to complete it, to have those discussions with those folks. So, but it's not addressed, we were told basically it's an in the field item issue. But like I said, they gave us folks that we could discuss it with, we have, and Furio right now, in fact, is putting a spreadsheet together to address the lines you're talking about. The biggest problem we have is when they fall. So when they do the wrap and then they fall, and we basically said, look, when this happens, we consider it to be a safety issue as well as obviously an aesthetic problem. And that we would notify them as soon as, one of those things happen.
Well, one of the problems is how do you identify those wires? I had an extra wire going into my house for 6-7 years until a painter pulled on it and said, hey, this isn't connected to anything. After, whoever was there before, I don't know how long ago, had a certain service. New service was connected. The old wire was left there. So we've got these orphan wires hanging over the streets.
Well, that's what I'm saying. What we were able to do was, and having met with them, we looked at the two companies' wires. We identified aesthetically what they were. And we also made it clear that if we had any questions, or I should say this, what we discussed was, if we have any questions as to whose wires they are, we would just submit that to each one of these folks, Verizon folks and the Comcast folks, who would take pictures. We would send it to them and say, are these your wires? If there was a question. I'm pretty sure that, we can identify them now, but if there are questions, that would be that's how we would address it.
But there was no direction agreement, anything about if it's Verizon's or if it's Comcast, whoever it is, that it's like, can you remove this off the poles? Because the ones that aren't connected to anything, they just wrap them them up and hanging them up there.
Well, the discussion was that Verizon leaves additional wires. We did ask if they could shorten those. Let me finish, because you know what, I'm also gonna say this to you right now up front. Council can decide not to sign these agreements, and I will tell you this, we had the discussion when I was on council about that, and we were basically told by Verizon, not so much like Comcast, that, and I don't know if that would be the condition now because they're already established here. You know, they'll work with us to a certain extent, and then if they, in other words, what I'm getting at is if you don't want to put that in the agreement, you can tell them you're not going to sign it, and then they can decide to pull the franchise or not. But the conversation we did have, and then you have residents who with one choice. But we did talk to them about it, and we are trying to work with them so that we can eliminate these instances, or at the very least have them shorten those spools. And that's what we're trying to do.
Well, they know what wires of theirs are not active. So can't we
Well, a
just
lot of
ask
those,
them?
okay, but those spools are active. What they do is if they have an issue with, if they have a time where the wires need to be cut, that's why I think they leave those there. Now, what's ever in your house, I mean, that's a different story.
Well, I mean, that's what causes those wires. Verizon was going into the house. At some point, somebody stopped using Verizon, the wire's still in the house. So they just leave them into the house. So you have extra wires.
Right.
I'm not trying to hold up the agreement. That's not my purpose. I've been asking this question for 2 years.
Right. And I'm saying that's what they told us. I mean, they-
Because if somebody moves in and they want to run the wire back, it's there.
That's how I understood it.
Yeah, I have the same issue. The house across the street, there was this loop of wire and it fell. And I guess somebody got up with someone and they came out, but all they did was coil it up and probably put a wire tie on it and hung it in the tree. So,
Right.
but how long, what's the duration of this franchise agreement?
10-year agreement. Well, I take that back. One is 10 and one is 5. Verizon is 5 years. They won't go for longer than a 5-year.
Because I was going to say, well, hopefully with greater attention to it.
Well, and
you
I will
having-
tell you this, the other discussion I had with the gentleman was that if I have, not necessarily the wires that are looped and placed up, up on the top of the pole, but if I have wires that fall and we call you and you don't come and fix it, we'll cut them. I'll cut them. And they would come and
Right.
That's basically what we said.
Question asked and answered.
I cut my own. I had the same thing that you had. I cut my own. Vote on resolution 2022-27. All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it.
Did we get a count on the votes? I didn't hear all parties say aye. For the record.
I know you said it. It was 5-0.
I don't think I heard anything from Ms. Leary, one way or the other.
Larry?
Abstain.
Okay. Resolution 2022-28. Motion to read it.
So moved.
Second. Thank you. Whereas the City of Newcastle franchise agreement with Verizon Delaware LLC has come up for renewal, and whereas the city has engaged with the Cohen Law Group to negotiate the terms of the renewal of the franchise agreement with Verizon Delaware LLC, and whereas the franchise agreement with the construction is for the construction, operation, and maintenance of a cable system encompassing the present and future city limits on terms and conditions set forth in the document attached and as known as the Verizon franchise agreement. And whereas Cohen Law Group has provided counsel with a detailed memorandum outlining the selling points of the Verizon franchise agreement. Now therefore, be resolved, the City of Newcastle hereby accepts the Verizon franchise agreement or the Verizon franchise agreement with Verizon Delaware LLC as negotiated by the Cohen Group and authorized by the city administrator to execute the same on behalf of the city. Any discussion on this one? Motion to accept? Need a vote? Okay, we'll do a name vote. Kathy, if you want to do a name vote, please.
Smith.
Aye.
Councilperson Shelley. Aye. Council President Slack.
Aye. Motion passes. Resolution 2022-29, a resolution confirming the mayor's reappointment to the Board of Health. A motion to read the resolution. Whereas the city of Newcastle code provides the mayor of Newcastle appoints 6 members to the Board of Health, subject to confirmation by city council for 2 years term. And whereas there are currently two positions eligible for appointment on the Board of Health. And whereas the city council proposed to confirm the mayor's reappointment of Eleanor Green and Mary Tish Gallagher to the Board of Health, each for 2 years terms ending on September 11, 2024. Now therefore, let it be resolved that the city council hereby confirms the appointment of the following persons to the Board of Health. Eleanor Green, term ending September 11, 2024. Tish Gallagher, term ending September 11, 2024. Any questions on these reappointments? I want to say one thing about the Board of Health lately. For years, you heard nothing. I think these people are more outgoing, they're a little bit more involved, and actually kind of impressed with the work they're doing. So, all in favor of the reappointment?
Aye.
Aye. Ayes have it. Mr. Smith, would you mind or Ms. Saunders, you can read this one, please.
For Ms. Taylor.
Correct.
Okay. Well, we need a
Motion on resolution 2022-30.
So moved.
Second.
Councilperson Saab.
Okay. A resolution to appoint Sandra Taylor to the Sea Level Rise Task Force. Whereas the Newcastle City Council established the Sea Level Rise Task Force by Resolution 2022-04. And whereas Resolution 2022-04 states that the task force shall be composed of no fewer than 5 and no more than 9 residents of the city of Newcastle to be appointed by City Council. And whereas Resolution 2022-04 provides for making additional appointments by the resolution of City Council. Now therefore be it resolved that the City Council hereby appoints the following person to the Sea Level Rise Task Force. Sandra Taylor. Her term ends with the expiration of the task force.
Any questions, Ms. Taylor?
Yeah, I just have a comment. I mean, Ms. Taylor lives in a part of town that is subject to flooding, but is not currently represented on the board. I think she's the 7th member, so we're still within the 5 to 9 range established originally. And she's been attending the meetings, so she's familiar with what they're doing.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Ayes have it. The last thing is the dog park. For discussion, I brought this up a while back, and just due to change of my life schedules and things, I dropped the ball, I'll be honest with you. I've been out looking. We do have an agreement with the trust. I think Mr. Lasco, Mr. Taylor are working out the legals of the dog park right now.
I've not been contacted.
Okay, has not, okay, I think he's going to. It's going to be at the Hermitage. A lot of people are actually very excited about it. I've received multiple emails, people just walking around town. I saw really good design down in Wildwood. They did it with a split rail post fence where you have the 3 wooden posts going across, and then they had like a wire mesh inside of it. So I just like council's permission to start getting bids on it just to see how much the fencing is going to cost.
I have a couple questions. So the last I ever knew of it was that great picture of you and Mr. Smith on the front page of Mr. Toner talking about the dog park. So are they giving us the land and then we are responsible for building it, or are they also giving us the land and they're building it, but we're responsible for
Right
maintaining
now,
it?
no, right now, they're giving us the land, the use of the land, and we're going to build it, we're going to maintain it. The maintenance is pretty much put mulch down. And then, some of them have some real fancy toys and things like that, but I think that can be worked out later. I think now, let's just get to the foundation built.
So the trust will still own the land.
Correct.
They're just giving us permission.
Mr. Day?
Just a couple of things. I thought originally when we talked about the dog park, we were talking about maintenance of the dog park.
now we have that, so what I'm asking for right now, is we can start getting bids, at least get a discussion, see where it's at.
Well, at the time that picture was taken, and the discussion was that the trustees would build it, we would maintain it.
Now they turned the grant down, if you remember.
Oh, okay.
They turned that grant down.
I didn't think it was a grant to us, but it was something that they were doing on their own.
No, this was pretty much my idea. I brought it up. Let's get some bids and see what we can get.
My issue is I'm a little hesitant about the bids and the trust at this point. We heard earlier tonight that they might turn over the Battery Park maintenance to us. I'm just a little leery that we might have a bigger issue, and I don't know if we want to, create additional maintenance items that we're going to have to take care of in the future.
Well, I mean, the maintenance is going to be minimal, Joe. Mulch, we produce that ourselves.
I think a bid might be a good idea because that's not agreeing to do it. It's getting bids, and if it comes in at some extraordinary amount, then if it comes in at cost of fencing and whatever. So, but yeah, it's a little concerning about the.
Yeah, I agree. As long as we're not making any commitment, we at least know how much money we're talking about. We may have to postpone it so it can be included in next year's budget.
Like I said, after that picture was taken, so I had some changes in life. I dropped the ball, but Mr. Patel, would you like to put that out for bid, maybe in the weekly journal, wherever? Get some ideas what the cost would be.
Doesn't somebody have to design it first?
It's already, it's a simple design. It's a square fencing with one down the center. You divide it by long dog park or.
So you both have an idea of what it is?
Yeah, it's extremely simple. It's a giant square basically with a fence down the center. And then on the entrance, you have a double gate system. So when you walk in, you shut the gate behind you, you open the gate to go into the dog park. And that way dogs can't get in and out by themselves. It's not like you're opening the gate directly. It's pretty simple. Okay. Mr. Day?
So just to go back on the bids and the plan, so, I mean, I understand about going out to bid, but, I mean, are we having, is the place, surveying the spot? Do we have any idea what's actually out there underground? I mean, is there a spec for the fence? Is there a spec for the mulch? Are we digging it out? Is there a foundation for the post? Like, all these things are really things that we need to hand to a contractor to get a sufficient bid. So I'm not, totally against this ballpark. Again, I'm a little skeptical, but I do think that we can't go out to bid without some kind of specification or a plan or even a location out there.
Well, we have a location that was decided, like I said, I was under the impression Mr. Keller would work with Mr. Glasgow. And I would follow the trust tomorrow.
I think what you really want is a request for proposals.
Right.
This is what I propose we build according to what you're asking for, and this is what it would cost
That's a
you.
different thing.
That's a different thing than just.
Different, okay.
Request. All right.
Okay. All right, moving on. The discussion establishments and ordinance for creating enforcement for illegal use of EV charging stations. Sorry, well, we go back. Mr. Waskins, what's your thoughts on that?
On the EV charging station?
Yes, sir.
Well, the questions become, where are you going to place them? Are they going to be level 1, level 2?
No, create an ordinance for enforcing illegal use of them.
You're going to need regulations to deal with people who overstay their welcome, so to speak, after their car has been charged. Regulations for people who are parking there without charging at all, gas-powered cars, for example. There may be other things. I don't know how you intend to handle the billing for this, or whether there will be additional charges for overstaying your welcome, so to speak. But I think those are the primary issues.
Right, we have any legal right to go on to the trust land since they're private property. Technically, they would be private property.
With their consent, yes, but you'd have a memorandum of understanding to that effect.
So, well, I had brought this up, because a friend of mine was parking, with a gas car was parking in an EV lot, an EV charging lot, and he goes, well, no one else was parked there, and I thought, well, yeah, but if they had come to park, you're in it, so, you know, that was something else. I think they should be clearly marked, first of all, green, hash, or whatever we want to call it, lines, like you have a yellow line to mark up in a parking area, green. I think that, and certainly the mayor can speak to this, you have charges for staying over, okay? And, or if you, I'm not sure how, because I don't own an AV. So you have charges for staying over your time, which can be implemented. But you also don't want to penalize the people who live here, who say, get home at 8 o'clock at night and plug in their car. And you don't want them to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning and move their car. So there would have to be something implemented for that. I mean, if they're home all day, they can go out. There, I think that this probably exists in other cities with these chargers. What did they do?
There was a group that worked together to institute this whole thing. We not have them handle this stuff down in the weeds, you know, come up with a draft for implementation.
Well, planning was from on it first, I think.
Yeah, planning was on it, and MSC,
MSC.
and then there was somebody from, I forget who it was. It's their baby.
I mean, this is still in its style stages, actually. And I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how it does play out across the country. I won't argue that. I mean, I don't know, Mr. Mayor, you did have your hand up. Would you like to comment? Oh, sorry, Mr. Davis.
That's all right. So, it is industry standard where the chargers notify you when your car is fully charged. It is quite common practice, ours included, where you get notified and then you idling fees if you are there louder, right? If you're there longer than probably 15 minutes, you start paying pretty heavy fees on top of your charge. I shared the example, a $25 charge when I was having a coffee and lunch with my daughter in DC turned into a $59 total charge because my car was there 60 minutes beyond the time it was notifying me that it was been charged. I've never made that mistake a second time. So that's pretty punitive. I think you need to have some advice from the chief. From my own management, from what I've seen as a EV driver for a couple years now, is you have to have appropriate signage. It's not for parking, it's for charging. Even EV owners shouldn't be there to park. It's not a parking spot. Think of it like if you pull up in front of a gas pump. You know, you shouldn't be running inside Wawa and being there for 25 minutes, right? That's not cool. So it's, you know, you get in, you get out. So, but it should be enforced. These things are going to become more popular. Most of the manufacturers are going to have complete EV fleets by the end of the decade, some before that.
I was thinking the same question about, we said we placed these thinking that they're primarily going to be used by residents, which exactly as Larry said, they're going to leave a charge overnight, and these are level 2 chargers, which take multiple hours, and therefore, are we going to ask people to get up in the middle of the night and move their vehicle? Also, it seems to me there should be 2 different levels of penalties. One for a charge, an electric vehicle that stays after the charge is complete, and a more severe one for a gas vehicle that parks in the EV charging station. And perhaps we could say that between midnight and 6 a.m., an EV parked in that spot, even if the charging is complete, is not fine, but a gas vehicle parked there at any time would be fine.
Let me just Mr. Mayor, your situation you just described, there's no, that fine that you paid or the extra you paid wasn't from the township you were in or whatever, it was from the electric company itself.
That is correct.
So really, we would have to set that on an MSC or the provider or whatever. And a lot of times, from what I understand, that's all done on an app. So that app's just gonna keep running.
Correct, and I also don't think you want to set up the police chief and have his team try to decide what's an electric vehicle and what's a sleep powered vehicle, if something's not obviously plugged in.
That's personally.
Did you have some?
No, go ahead, I'll wait.
I'm sorry.
What kind of brought this up is over at the Chestnut Street parking lot. We've got the Charger there, and there are 2 work trucks that park there all the time in front of that Charger. So you can't even, you can't use it. So if anyone down at Bull Hill, which I know, I think a couple of people in Bull Hill do have electric, they can't park there because these 2 work trucks are always there. So, I haven't noticed up by the fried chicken place, if that's the same issue that occurs there.
So, and I'm just assuming there's no state ordinance yet for electric vehicle charging stations. So if we pass something, it would be a local ordinance. And then, are there other local ordinances that the police enforce? I'm assuming most of the violations are state code, right?
We don't typically enforce the city ordinance for parking. We go to the state statute. In this case, it would be as simple as drafting an ordinance that said, you can't park where signs prohibit. That's a typical state law that we enforce. That covers any sign. You put a sign up that says EV parking only and there's a gas powered car there. That's a ticket for parking where signs prohibit. It's that simple. I don't know. My instinct is to say I wouldn't touch this overcharge thing. I wouldn't know how to know if you're overcharging. If you're an EV vehicle and you're not plugged in, I'm writing the ticket. You know, that way we don't know whether or not, I don't know if you're gas or electric or not. I know you're not charging. So EV charging only. And anything outside of that, you park or a sign prohibits. I think it's that simple.
Suzanne, it might be smart, I can take this back to the MSC, to see if SemaConnect, who is our provider, and for overnight hours, maybe not have idling fees. I'll have to figure out whether or not they can.
But the ordinance that the chief just mentioned, creating that ordinance, or we already have it.
I'd have to look because we don't use the city ordinance for parking much. There's a state statute that says park where signs prohibit. I'm sure we could enforce that. It's kind of a catch-all for any sign that may not.
Well, conflicting stories, Mr. Laska says there's no state.
No, it's not
State
even.
law dealing with the EVs specifically.
Parking, right.
He's referring
But you're
to
talking
general
general.
parking.
Okay, fair enough. Okay,
For signs prohibit, they cover signs that aren't typically already identified.
okay.
And, you know, can we mark these spots, like you have the yellow lines going across, can we mark these spots in green with the same thing? So it's a visible reminder, you're pulling into an EV spot, don't do it.
That would be up to you. I wouldn't write this ticket unless there was a sign that specifically said EV charging only.
Right, because even with a handicap, there has to be a sign, it just can't be painted.
That's right.
But I'm assuming it has to be a sign and it has to be a marked spot.
Yes.
Yeah, so
So you know which direction you're parking in and similar issues.
So you mark the spot and you put the sign up.
Yeah, I mean, you mark it how you want to mark it, but you
Yeah.
definitely want that sign.
The sign.
Well, trust me, the only one we can mark, I mean, is the one on Delaware. Sure.
Chestnut.
The old recycling area.
They're not in yet, are they?
No, it's not in there yet.
Not yet.
Well, we can get, I don't think the trust would have an issue with that.
Yeah, we'd have to need their permission.
Do you want me to follow up on that?
Sure. Absolutely. All right, 2 more things. Let's get back to one. Mr. Martell, can you give us an update on the concerns of establishing a tourism development director?
Sure, Mr. Platt, as council has in its packet, an updated job description that again was generated by Mike Connolly. He and I reviewed that. He made a couple changes in basically what you see. I think it's I'll say it's a tighter description about what the goals and objectives are. And just if Mr. Platt, you'll allow me some comments on that job description. Basically, the description assumes that this is a 2-year position, not a 1-year position, which we talked about, I guess, last month at the police station. position with the primary goals of developing and implementing a marketing plan to improve tourism and promote business development for the city. The development of the marketing plan will be the initial focus of the position, with the implementation of that plan beginning later in the first year of the position, and of course throughout the second year. The visitor center already represents the various attractions, businesses, and events throughout the city, and not just NCHS activities. This position will expand the visitor center ability to perform this function and make it a more effective tool for the city. Mr. Connolly calculated that the hourly rate would be $22.25 per hour, which would be annually $46,280. I know that was a concern that council had as far as attracting someone based on the dollars allotted over a 2-year period. The tourism and business marketing manager will need to work closely, obviously, with small businesses, attractions, and special event committees to understand their marketing needs and assist with their marketing efforts. Again, these were things that were identified to some degree by council, and obviously Mr. Connolly is emphasizing that he understands that these are the things that council would like to see happen. Again, the position will identify opportunities for partnership between businesses and attractions within the city in order to promote patronage of Newcastle businesses. One thing here that he pointed out, possible candidates may include graduate students, marketing professionals that are stay-at-home parents of school-age children, recent retirees from the field, etc. And I think that, quite frankly, the idea of reaching out to graduate students to help do this is an interesting idea. I think council, I believe the mayor had mentioned it at a meeting some time ago, the opportunity or the advantage, if you will, of reaching out to a graduate student to help the city in these types of positions. And again, it's a little redundant, the position is meant to promote the city and its businesses, attractions, and events as a whole. It's not solely to promote NCHS. One of the other things I just also wanted to mention, because I think there's some concerns about contacts and that NCHS has, in particular, Mr. Connolly, who I just want to point out has recently worked with the Greater Wilmington Convention and Visitors Bureau to host the PBS/Amazon Prime show Travels with Darley, which should air in the spring of 2023. And I can get council the website for that. But Ms. Souter and I were in a meeting with the folks from Event Allies last week, and it was brought up that Jerry McPhilly is also participating in that show and will be commenting on the city and, well, just biking trails in general throughout the state. And of course, we will be a part of that as well. I know there was some concern about this was just going to be an opportunity, or primarily an opportunity, to just keep the visitor center open another 2 days. And in my discussions with Mr. Connolly, I made it clear, and he agrees, that no, the initial approach here is to do the things that I just mentioned and the things that council was emphasizing from the onset of this whole project, if you will. I think that one of the nice things of having a 2-year program is that if initially we can't, or they can't, provide that person as someone who's, quote, at the desk, just making sure the center's open an additional 2 days, it can grow into that position. You'll see with what I gave you, there were some percentages as to time commitments. Anybody who's written a business plan knows it's a map, but it's not necessarily, the map has to be fluid. There have to be other ways to get to the final destination. And I think part of the way, one of the nice things, again, in doing this in 2 years, is that you have the ability to monitor what is going on. One of the things we wrote, if you look at the memorandum of agreement, the draft memorandum that was put together, it's clear, well, it's right there that, first of all, this person wouldn't be hired without some oversight from the city, myself, and there would be quarterly reports to council that would indicate the successes and the direction that this person is going. So there will be an opportunity for council to not only be aware, of course, but comment on what is, what the process is and what's happening throughout this 2-year period. So that's kind of where, again, it's kind of a summation. I think I hit a lot of this, last month. Perhaps there was some misunderstanding that It was simply to add the opportunity to have somebody there an additional 2 days. Yes, I think that's a very good byproduct and an opportunity of this, but with the idea that, again, you're getting a 2-year program versus 1, and you have an opportunity to expand it over those 2 years.
And the program's halfway in place already. I mean, with the connections they have and.
Oh, absolutely. It's somewhat already with their, and you talked about, okay, there's been discussion about their webpage. Council, if you recall, has allocated $10,000 for various marketing materials, that type of thing. And I think I mentioned again last month that I did talk to Mike about this. Maybe what we need to do is look at that. How can we upgrade the webpage? And maybe out of that 10,000, 3,000 or 4,000 goes to doing that. And yes, he does have, and they do have relationships with the local businesses and with, in terms of local events and that type of thing. Does it have to be expanded? Absolutely. And I also made that clear to Mr. Conway that, okay, we don't want to just represent the businesses from, from downtown. We want to be sure that whatever we're doing is representative and is helping businesses throughout the city. And I can assure you that he absolutely understands that.
I was confused by the hours. It says 16 hours a week, Monday and Tuesday, 10 to 4. So that's 12 hours a week and 4 hours for flexible. So that's 75% of the time. Is that the time the person would be at the desk?
No, he is simply saying, no, what he's putting there, and again, it can be, he is simply saying that this person will be working and doing these other things, not sitting at the desk. They will be doing these things during that time period.
But not trying to do it
No.
and sit at the
No.
desk simultaneously, because
No.
I don't see that as
No,
feasible.
no, not initially, and no, that is absolutely not. I think he just put that in there, or the idea was to say, this is how it would be managed. But again, no, it's not to just sit at the desk, and I think that was misunderstood from what I said.
Well, just looking at the percentages on the next page, it seems like a good bit of time, out of only 2 days, a good bit of time is visitor center time. And that's not anything that we had hoped for as we've looked at this a long time. And, I have staffed visitor centers, I've supervised visitor centers, and I've managed visitor centers. And if you're doing visitor center work, you're doing visitor center work. You don't have a lot of time to do other things. And, I see this position, hopefully if somebody out there gripping and grinning and talking to people outside of Newcastle. And for most of this, it seems to be talking to ourselves. And, we need to get known outside our little circle. And I don't see that happening with this structure. I appreciate all the effort that went into it. And I know there's a lot of effort that went into it, but frankly, I just don't think it provides the focus and the energy that we need to really help put Newcastle on the map. Like Mr. Young, Dr. Young was saying. I just don't see this working. And 16 hours a week, I just, I would rather do it for 1 year and get a good year and see how we're doing. It's just, I don't know, I just don't find it satisfactory.
I'd like to thank you guys for, defining better what we were trying to get down. So the responsibilities and implementing the marketing plan and all the branding and working with everybody else, that's great. And this is really good. But to tying them to the visitor center, this person who we hire may not want to work Mondays and Tuesdays. They may have meetings other nights, or they may have other projects they're trying to do, and it's not limited to Mondays and Tuesdays. So, and I really, tying it to the visitor center, again, at some point, they're going to be tied to the desk, not, it says 15% of the time. That's a lot of time where they should be out. The idea that we had for this person is they're not sitting here, they're out there making the relationships to bring people here. So,
And another thing that's missing, when we were working on the resolution, Mr. Lasco very rightly pointed out that we needed measurable goals and deadlines, which I provided for the draft contract, and basically that seems to have gotten lost, and this is a general position description, just describing what a position does rather than what it accomplishes.
Yeah, just a few things. I do think this is much improved over what we had originally, looked at from the Historical Society. But I'll also say I do have some hesitance about it. I'm not really in favor of the 2-year. I think we should hire somebody for 1 year with substantially more hours per week so that we can hit the ground running and make an impact quickly.
So
that's it. Thank you.
I had one other concern too. In the MOU, the last paragraph on the first page says that the person will provide the reports to council quarterly and quote, receive further feedback and instruction from the city as to further work assignments. Yet on the first page of the job description, it says under item 2, the tourism and business marketing manager reports to the executive director, that's Mr. Conley, correct?
Yes.
And it seems to me we're getting right back into what was found to be one of the main problems the last time we tried this, is that the person had too many bosses. And they were pulled into giving, one person wants them to do this, and this person wants them to do that. And
Valid point.
I see that as a problem.
Yeah, but we voted 4-1 on this last time around. We voted 4-1 on this. And now all of a sudden I get 3 stories that pretty much all match. It's pretty interesting. I find that quite interesting. That after we all vote 4-1, and now we got 3 stories the next day pretty much, or coming into this meeting, that it changes. This is this is probably one of the best opportunities for the city to get out and start meeting people and start running with this. The connections are already there. We're already tied into the state. We're tied into other organizations. If you were at the trustee meeting on last Tuesday night, Mr. Conley says he's already doing this for us. He stated that. He's already stated like measurables, okay? Nobody's come up with a measurable yet. You put it on their website, that's a measurable. They hand out coupons for restaurants, or they give discounts for surveys and things like that. They're there. This is a good thing for the city. If you want to start over, that's fine. But as far as I'm concerned, we have a vote to move forward. It's a legal vote, and it would have to be changed. It would have to be changed at a public meeting with public notice. So as far as I'm concerned, I understand all the questions. I think Mr. Barthel answered them tonight, and I think he should continue the negotiations, because I don't think we technically have the authority to override our vote without public knowledge.
My understanding was our vote was to authorize Mr. Barthel to negotiate with Mr. Conley and come back with some proposals. It did not commit us to accept those proposals. Is that correct, Mr. Bosco?
I'd have to look back at the meeting minutes. I don't want to quote somebody or a decision verbatim without looking.
Okay, I mean, I don't want my comments to be interpreted to say that I'm not in favor of having a tourism director. I just think there are some problems with the way this is structured.
That was what the actual wording was, and we'll go from there.
Okay.
But I do find it, Mr. You did have something to say.
Thank you. I don't know what you were implying, but yes, after this was proposed at a meeting. We looked at it. We didn't have a lot of thought on it. We voted on it that meeting. I'll take responsibility for voting on it, probably before I should have. I should have tabled it at the time. But shortly after that meeting, I did have a meeting with Bill Barthel to go over my concerns. And I see that he has changed some of this or worked it out with Mr. Connolly. But, you know, it was presented to us. We voted on it. And again, I should have motioned to table it at that time and did a little bit more research. But after I did my research, I had concerns and I brought them up tonight. So I just wanted to speak my piece.
And
Now,
I
and I
actually,
will speak my piece too, because like I said, it just seems like these are for violations. It truly does. That within a small amount of time, there's already done after a vote that was done in public.
You're making accusations you can't back up, so you better watch yourself.
and I
Is that a
actually,
threat, sir?
I
I'm just
Is
saying,
that a threat? Is that a threat?
you're the one accusing people. of
No,
destroying
I made
violations.
accusations. I didn't make a threat. Bring it on.
But I did call Mr. Barthel a couple of days after that, and we talked about this. And also I spoke with Mr. Lusko after the meeting because he had wanted to know why I voted against him. And so,
Table. Last is report on the playground, please.
Well, thank you for saving the best for last.
Absolutely.
I promise to be quick, and I want to start by inviting everybody who wants to take part in the playground committee. Our meeting is on the third Tuesday at 5:30. We welcome everybody, your opinions, especially your experience. This process has been a really joyful process. We've learned so much. And our end goal of having kids who are happy on slides, and climbing equipment, on swings is really what motivates us and keeps us going. So first thing I wanted to tell everybody is that in addition to the $100,000 that we have from the bond bill, we have been approved to apply for the DENREC grant, the ORPT grant, and that's for $50,000. So that we hope will be earmarked for sidewalks that are ADA compliant, so that the playground is accessible to kids in wheelchairs. And for those of you who are not as familiar with the playground, having the playground be accessible is really, really important. We want to make sure that kids can get on swings, that there are slides that they have access to, which means we need a ramp. And making an accessible playground is not cheap. So I just wanted to let you know that one of the reasons why we are fundraising in addition to the bond bill money, in addition to the DENREC grant, is so that we can afford to do things for kids who normally don't have things done for them. And that's really important. In addition to the DENREC grant, the council challenged us last time to think about the other parks and the other playgrounds in the community, not just Battery Park. Everybody loves Battery Park. It's easy to love. There are other playgrounds as well. And so our group, Stephen's here, Brian was here earlier, went and did a survey of all of the playgrounds in Newcastle to see what's there, what's working, what's open, and then to put together a plan to raise some money so that those playgrounds can have new equipment as well. So I wanted to let you know that that is in progress, that we have made that commitment to make that happen in addition to the Battery Park playground. So those are the two things that I wanted to make everybody aware of. Next steps for us are to figure out what the bidding will look like. We have a guide in this. He is Leonard Sofrin. He's the capital project manager, the Department of Parks and Recreation, City of Wilmington. He does this all the time. And so he has agreed to meet with Bill Barthel and take us through the process of bidding. He has told me just as recently as today that because our money doesn't come from the CRT, I think I'm saying that acronym correctly, but it comes directly from the bond bill, we actually have a little bit of leeway when it comes to bid. So he's going to take us through that. He's going to let us know what we can and can't do, and he should help us expedite this process so that we can get through and actually build our playground before it gets over a lot. The next step after that is to meet with somebody, maybe on the planning commission, to figure out what those ADA walkways need to look like, how steep they are, what the walkways, where they go, and then of course how much they're going to cost. So those are our two milestones that are coming up that I hope to have and be able to report on those by the next time I'm here. I do want to make a couple of clarifications because I hear things, you hear things. And I want to make sure that what we hear is actually fact. And so the first thing I want to say is that any funding that we've raised already, whether it's bond bill or whether it's DENREC funds, those as they come in will be supplemented by private funds. So not another dollar, I hope, will come out of the city or the state. They'll come out of places like the Longwood Foundation. They'll come out of places like Latin Q, who's invited us to apply for a grant, and come from private donors. So I want to assure you that we're not looking to fill debt or some kind of obligation for the city. We're looking to support whatever we're able to do, whatever we've built so far with private funds, and that's important. The second thing that I want to clarify is the size of the park. It doesn't change from what was there originally. What was there in 2019 is what we're looking to have there now. So it's not that we're going to have tons and tons of things in this park. It's going to be the same as what it's always been before. It was shortened a little during the pandemic. It's just going to go back to what it was before. So if somebody tells you this is a monster park, it's not. It's what we had before. The third thing is phase 2. What we're looking for in phase 2, which is sometimes called the SHIP, is really slides and climbing equipment. You can't have a good playground without a good slide. You can't have a good playground without some good climbing equipment. And that's what we're hoping to do for phase 2. Will it have a nautical theme? I hope so. And if that's what you guys want, it'll be great. It'll have, flags, and it'll have sails if we can do that. But if we can't, it'll have slides and it'll have climbing equipment. And I think everybody who has ever been to a playground agrees that those are some of the prime attractions that you see at a playground. And I just want to bring back the point that we're committed to making this an accessible playground. Having a ramp that goes all the way up so that kids can get on the slide, having ADA compliant walkways. These are things we have to fundraise to do, and we're committed to. And then the last thing I was encouraged to hear, and I think his name is Bill Emery, he's here talking about materials. And having contractors and people who know materials part of this process is really important. I've learned a lot, and I work with materials every day for the past 30 years. So I know a fair amount about materials, but you can never know materials as well as a contractor does. And having someone like him as part of our team, I hope he joins us to lend us his expertise. The first phase of this part is really going to be metal and plastic. And that's for durability, and that's also for heat. If you have slides that are made or materials that are equipment that is made of metal in places that kids touch them, it's going to be too hot on days like when we touch them. So we thought through what materials are needed for phase 1, and when it comes to phase 2, we'll think through those too and really welcome whatever input we can get from people who have experience or people who want to learn about it and become experts at it. And I think that's all I have for you tonight. Although I would love to have the city council weigh in on and commit to spending the $100,000 grant that we got from the bond bill and committing it to the playground and the playground. Make sure that what was earmarked for this playground gets spent on the playground.
Before we jump that far, I'll just take some questions first, because I think that would have to be done by resolution. If we're going to spend the money, that would have to be earmarked by resolution.
Was it an earmark for the playground?
It is, but it's still just a general fund, so if I'm correct.
Well, Mr. Platt, I think, yes, it came from the state earmarked for that, and as Ms. Swift pointed out, the SORP grant that we're applying for is for this specific purpose. But my suggestion to council is, because there are a lot of opinions, obviously, that you're hearing for and against that, I think at some point you need to say, from my perspective, okay, hopefully we'll get that 50,000, we have 150,000. Here's what we can do with 150,000. And at that point, I would suggest that you go, okay, what are the other things you want to do with whatever the next phase is or that type of thing? Because if council says, okay, we just want to spend 150 and build something this big, then you need to, with all due respect, you need to declare that. If you say, okay, we're going to go forward and we're willing to put these folks to go out and try and get all that other money, I think you need to decide early on before that. In my opinion, I think that's your step.
Okay, that's a valid point.
maybe that's something we can take up on the 29th.
Oh, absolutely.
Talk about other budgetary matters.
But I mean, one way or the other, the money goes there. So it's just how much further we're willing to back the project. I got a couple questions. I've heard $1 million multiple times. I've sat through a few meetings. It's not a total cost of $1 million, is it?
No, the first phase is 5 pieces of playground equipment. It's a whole bunch of swings and it's installation. 30% of that is installation, and that price tag is $100,000. We did incredibly well working with our playground vendor. He's throwing in signs for, which equipment can be used by which age group. They are bending over backwards. We're getting 20% discounts here and 50% discounts here. They want us to be happy. They want to work with us. And what we've been able to do with $100,000 is really exceptional. Now, the $1 million number, and this is where this came from, when we went around and looked at the other parks, the parks that had great equipment, and we saw how much they cost, they started at $1.5 million. And I was shocked. I mean, how could you spend that much money on a playground? And it happens all the time. So we thought if we could do all of these things for $1 million, set our sights high for what we could fundraise for, then let's see where we land. Right now, we're at 100,000. So we've come pretty far. We've gotten a lot for not too much money.
Question here is it implementable in phases? Okay, you get 100,000. Does that mean there's 100,000 in the ground?
Yes.
Okay, so great. So you can do it in phases.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And thank you for the report. It was very complete. I think if you're using state money, accessibility is required. It's the law, not a suggestion.
And it should be.
And my other concern was you said paths. I thought with our last meeting, we weren't going to put more than one in.
So it's one, but it has to have an access point to different places within the playground. So there'll be one that'll come to the base ramp. There'll be one that'll go to the swing. It's the same path, but it
Right,
just
so
has-
this imaginary comes off of the tennis courts, it goes out and then it branches out. Okay, I'm just making sure, because I know there was a lot of concern from the committee at the meeting about covering green space.
Right.
Battery, so
And so
I knew that was a valid concern. I just wanted to clarify that.
if you think if you have a child in a wheelchair and you have to get them to each place in the park that they can enjoy. So that's what the path will be for.
And just, I clarified, this is part of the reason why this is all coming about. It's not so much that the playground's outdated. I mean, I was there 2 weeks ago with my granddaughter. It was fun. I had a good time. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I'll have more fun just with my granddaughter personally, whether the equipment's there or not, is what we grass. But by doing this, it's given a lot more people the opportunity to enjoy the playground, enjoy the park. Because now they got access to the playground, they got access to the park. And that's when the toys are a little bit more,
Yeah, a lot more stimulation.
a lot more stimulation.
And as you heard earlier, instead of taking your grandkids to Glasgow,
Correct.
taking your grandkids, someplace where you have to get in the car and go, you can take your kids to Battery Park. They're going to remember this park. They're going to want to come back to it.
Right. I just want to reinforce the reason why it's coming up. And just like I said, we've had this discussion at the meetings. I just make sure everybody understands. I think this should come up at the next council meeting, just how far, like Mr. Martell said, I think he said quite well, how far we're willing, how much this group is willing to back this project.
Well, she already said that she's not going to ask for any more money from the city. So, and that the remaining, however much it will be raised from, in fact, I was sitting here looking up this one grant I know, and I was going to give it to you, but, so there's 100 and maybe 50, and there's no more money out of the city's pocket, except for, maintenance of the mulch and stuff, I guess. Is that what you're referring to?
Correct, but I mean, even just the footprints, I mean, it's going to change it a little bit. It's not going to be much bigger, but they're gonna say they're gonna put a ship in with sliding boards, I think we should commit saying we're gonna support that. If they're gonna raise the money themselves and do that, I think council should commit to saying we back this project 100%.
Okay, all right, I understand what you're saying. It wasn't that.
It's not about the money, it's just about supporting the project.
Okay.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second. All in favor? Aye.